Welcome in on a Wednesday. It is the Chico Borman Show here on BigPlay.com. Also, you can stream the show on Twitter. Check us out at Chico Show CLE. That's Chico Show CLE. And on Facebook, YouTube, the Chico Borman Show. So we are so glad to have you along and appreciate all of you who have been doing your damnedest to kind of find out exactly where this is at, because it is a little confusing across social media and trying to figure out, okay, what's the handle and what's the number? Well, the telephone number, here you go, 216-626-7901. Certainly encourage you to call in with whatever might be on your mind. Again, 216-626-7901. Coming up later in the show, the 2 o'clock hour, when we always bring a guest in. Oh, I can't wait for this guy. And it's going to kick off a Wednesday ritual that goes back to my days on the radio. Brett Boone, the former All-Star second baseman, spent 14 years in the major leagues. Yep, Boone. That name sounds familiar. Yeah, third generation. Ray Boone, who actually was drafted and played for the Cleveland Indians, then Cleveland Indians, was a part of the World Series team in 48. That was Grandpa Ray. Then there was Papa Bob, and then Aaron and Brett. And, of course, Aaron, or Uncle Arnie, as we like to refer to him. Uncle Arnie, the manager of the Yankees. And Brett, of course, had a very, very nice career for himself, 14 seasons, and now the host of the Brett Boone podcast. And we'll tell you all about that coming up in just a bit. Well, oh, boy. I mean, oftentimes, careful what you wish for. But I got to tell you that I felt like yesterday it was inevitable that Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout were going to square off for all the marbles late in that game. But again, sometimes what you wish for, it doesn't come true. But it just felt too good that, in this case, it had to happen, and it did happen. And if you missed it, Japan knocking off the United States last night 3-2. Mike Trout was at the plate. Shohei Ohtani was on the mound. And you want to talk about devastating sliders. I mean, 100 miles an hour, and that thing had some tight, sharp break and tight, sharp break late. That was an incredible matchup, incredible win for Japan, and it lived up to the billing. I'll be curious to see what the numbers are for that game. Remember, yesterday we were telling you that could very well blow away the most watched game in baseball history, whether it be WBC, whether it be Major League Baseball, anything. Going into last night, the highest rated Major League Baseball game was the 1980 World Series, Game 6, between the Philadelphia Phillies and the Kansas City Royals. Phillies winning their first World Series title. And by the way, speaking of more Boone links, Bob Boone was the catcher for Tug McGraw behind the plate. And Tug McGraw Bob Boone had the best seat in the house for that one unfurling. So we'll have to talk to Booney about that. But, yeah, I would think that game last night probably eclipses the 54, I think it's 54.9, so I rounded up, 55 million viewers. It was absolutely incredible. Now, we had the Cavaliers in action last night against Brooklyn, and we said, well, which one are you going to choose? You really didn't have to, because the Cavs and the Nets were over, and it started at 7:30. They ended before the end of the WBC, and the fact that you were able to see the most important part which was Shohei Ohtani striking out Mike Trout. I want to bring in my good buddy Nick Padone. And Nick, I don't know if you had a chance to watch it, the WBC. I know you said you were going to be locked on the Cavs, and for good reason. Did you see Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout, the showdown?
Yeah, and the timing was perfect on this, Chico. So the Cavs, they made you a little bit worried late in that fourth quarter. They weren't scoring a whole lot of points. The Nets were coming back in, but the Cavs were able to hold off Brooklyn, secure that dub. And then, just like that, you tune into the WBC. I think it's the 8th inning. I'm like, all right, here we go. Let's lock in. Shift our entire focus over there. So I was able to see the whole, end of the game. And like you said, that showdown where Ohtani was able to shut down Trout. Now the two of them, back in the same locker room with the Angels. I'm sure that's probably a little bit awkward in these next couple of days as they get things going.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because they're good buddies.
Yeah, of course they are. Good buddies. But I think with Mike Trout, you say who wanted it more or who did it mean more to? I mean, you could debate that all day long. And again, 216-626-7901. Japan, this was a huge deal. Some countries it's a huge deal, and Japan it's a huge deal. And they came close a couple of times. This is their first World Baseball Classic. And so you say, well, good for Japan. And I do feel that way. Good for Japan, good for Shohei Ohtani, good for baseball. I mean, baseball wanted any kind of promotion. Baseball wanted any kind of a commercial leading into the season, which, by the way, 1 week from tomorrow, March 30th, your Cleveland Guardians will be in Seattle taking on the Mariners, and Major League Baseball will be getting it underway for real. No more spring training, no more Cactus League, MLB at its finest 1 week from tomorrow. But, yeah, I mean, you think about Mike Trout, and one of the things with Mike Trout, he's a very interesting guy on many different levels. The first thing you think of with Mike Trout is what? Mike Trout has never really been in the big stage. He hasn't had an opportunity because of the Angels, but he is clearly, without a doubt, one of the best players, not just now, but one of the best players to ever play the game, period. But where guys are measured and where guys make their name and their memories and kind of their imprint on the game and in fans' minds is in the big moments, in the playoffs, in the World Series. I've always said, and this is taking nothing away from Derek Jeter because he's a Yankee and I'm a Indians/Guardians fan and all that. Derek Jeter's a great player. But imagine if, Derek Jeter were on the Kansas City Royals and he never really, well, the Royals did get there in 2014 or whatever it was, but, didn't have all the postseason stage. That's where your name is really made. Now, it doesn't take away from a great career if, you never made it there, thus Mike Trout. But think about Trout for a second. Everyone's been saying, well, if it wasn't for the bad Angels and Artie Moreno and all the dumb deals, Mike Trout, you feel bad. He should have been on these big stages by now. Then he gets on the big stage and he just happens to face his good buddy and teammate Shohei Ohtani. I'm sorry, man. That's got to eat at you for a while because, again, Mike Trout, Nick, has not had many, quote-unquote, big stage moments, and that was one. Even if he doesn't strike out, put it in play. But let's face it, Shohei Ohtani, with those sliders and the final slider, he dominated him in that at-bat.
And you know what I hope that this doesn't do, Chico, is if the Angels ever make a postseason, and God, they should. I mean, two of the best players, you could argue the two best players in all of baseball on that roster, if they make the playoffs. Hopefully this doesn't become a conversation like, oh, remember Trout in the WBC that last at bat? I don't think it will. I don't think baseball fans are as reactionary and as knee-jerky as basketball fans, football fans who would kind of jump to those assumptions. But I don't know. Trout's a great player, and I definitely don't think that one at bat against Shohei Ohtani should have any impact on Trout's career in MLB moving forward.
And we'll talk more about this coming up top of the hour with Brett Boone, former All-Star second baseman, who will join us each and every Wednesday on the Chico Borman Show. But one last thing before I move on, and I want to talk some Cavaliers basketball. Folks, I know I talked about it the other day, yesterday. Shohei Ohtani, there's no discussion on who the best player in the game is. And you say, well, it's kind of an unfair grading scale because he does both. No, that's just it. I mean, he does both, and he just doesn't do both. This isn't some middle reliever that they can bring in that has a 3.5 ERA, but is also talented enough to hit 40 home runs. This is a guy that can dominate on the mound. I mean, you saw it last night. He's hitting triple digits on the gun. He's throwing a, just kind of make you weak in the knee slider, which is how he retired Mike Trout. And then, we're talking about a guy that just 2 years ago hit 40-some home runs. I mean, there is no doubt. There are great players in Major League Baseball. There are many stars in Major League Baseball. And you say, well, that guy's the best all-around player. A lot of times you say all-around player, you're talking about hitter. Or this guy's the best pitcher in baseball, and, man, he's just so dominant, he has to be in the conversation. You have a guy that does both at an exceptionally high level that hasn't been seen since the days of, yes, George Herman Roots. So we got to put to bed any discussion about who the best player in baseball is right now, because it is Shohei Ohtani. Now, last year, I have no problem. Aaron Judge had the historic season. He had an unbelievable year, and it wasn't just home runs. He plays defense. He can run, obviously hit for average as well. I have no problem with Aaron Judge winning it last year. But I laughed when people would say, well, it's Aaron Judge, and that's it. I mean, this is closed. This is a closed book, end of conversation. No, it's not. It never was, and it never should have been. Because Shohei Ohtani, I don't know if you got used to him. I don't know if it's because he plays on the West Coast, but he proved it again, not that he needed to some of us, but to some of you, he did prove, look, I am the best player in Major League Baseball. 216-626-7901. Mentioned the Cavaliers last night, 115-109 victory. Before we get into the standings and where the Cavaliers are at right now with all of that, Donovan Mitchell with who was the unfortunate soul that he dunked over last night, Nick? I can't think.
I think that it was Brett Wanamaker, former one-time Boston Celtic. I think he was on the Knicks as well. And man, it was unfortunate. I always feel bad for the guy that ends up on the wrong side of the poster because he was doing his job. I mean, he was playing defense.
Yeah.
A lot of times, especially in modern NBA, you see guys just make a business decision there. But man, he was on the unforgiving end of that Mitchell slam.
Yeah, it was. I mean, when you talk about posterized dunks, a lot of times it's okay. He's putting up a fight. You just go over top of him. But he went over top of him, and he did it with such authority. I mean, you could see Donovan Mitchell coming back down the floor. He wanted to see the replay, but forgot that he wasn't in Cleveland. So, of course, in Brooklyn, they're not going to show that. He wanted to see the replay, and I would too. I mean, you have a poster dunk like that. Yeah, I'd want to see that over and over and over and over again. But the Cavaliers do win 115-109 over Brooklyn. Donovan Mitchell, 31 points. Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, 17. One guy that we really need to be talking more about, who has been really, really good of late and hopefully will continue into the postseason, Nick, is Karis LeVert. I mean, when we're looking at the bench and we're saying, what's going on with guys like Dean Wade and can you count on anybody on the bench? And, well, Karis LeVert all of a sudden has been absolutely magnificent. He had 18 points last night, and it's not just on the offensive end. I mean, he's active defensively. He's already said, he was joking around. He said, I'm already in playoff mode. He's played in the postseason. But Karis LeVert has been a lifesaver for them.
Yeah, he's going to be big. And as we near closer to the playoffs, I like what JB Bickerstaff has been doing and giving Karis LeVert a little bit of a longer leash. Same with another guy that's been red hot, at least these last two, Jetty Osman.
Jetty.
He's had a longer leash too. Obviously played in the NBA Finals, didn't go the Cavs way, but he's another guy that has that experience. So I like that JB kind of leaning on those guys a little bit more, a little bit less of Isaac Okoro, a little bit less of Lamar Stevens. Now, obviously those guys are good players and they're impactful on what they do on the defensive side of the ball, but come playoff time, when that intensity ramps up, you need guys that have been there before. I think JB is knocking it out of the park, and we need Karis, we need Jetty come playoff time.
Yeah, and JB's taking a lot of heat. Let's face it. Well, is he okay? He was the perfect coach. I've heard this a lot, Nick. I'm sure you have as well. JB Bickerstaff is the perfect coach to develop the guys the Cavs need to develop, but I just don't know if he's the right guy to lead them in the postseason and go deep in the postseason. Now, the first thing we can say is, well, I guess only time will tell. But I will say I think it's kind of unfair because, again, we're talking about a very young team, and I know we don't like to say, well, the coach is learning as well, but he is kind of learning because his guys are learning. There is no substitution. I was talking to Nick before the show, and I remember saying this last year when the Cavs were on the verge of getting into the postseason, how important I thought it would be, not necessarily for last year because they weren't going to go anywhere last year in the postseason, but more so for this year, how important last year would be if they got a true first-round playoff series, even if they got swept. Not that I would have wanted that. Any of us would have wanted that. But even if they got swept, the idea of getting that postseason experience is vital. And I think now, you were talking about JB figuring out the rotation. That's a big thing. I think they've got, 8 games left. Figuring out the rotation, who we can count on late in the game, who we can count on. And he even said with LeVert, sometimes he's going to be in there late in the game, sometimes he's not, but he's just ready. And he's ready on both sides of the ball. But come playoff time, look, the good news is this is a team, they're going to be in the postseason, and I think they're going to be in the postseason for a few years to come. But, folks, I think we need to temper expectations. And, no, I'm not trying to rain on anyone's parade because I love the Cavaliers just as much as you folks do, and I think they're an incredibly exciting team. The X factor is always, and especially in the NBA playoffs, experience. Because, and I'm sure Booby has talked about this and will talk about this, and anybody who's played the game at that high of a level, anybody who's played the game at that high of a level and has been fortunate enough to play in the postseason knows that it is just a different animal. You get to the postseason, that first game on the road is a wow moment. Even for guys that have been playing for a while, even for guys that, come from big-time colleges, blue bloods, and you played in those tough conference matchups, and then you got into the NCAA tournament, and it's just not the same. And the regular season for the NBA is just not the same, as we see. You get load management, things like that. All of a sudden, the playoffs come, and Nick, you know this, watching a lot of basketball and watching a lot of Cavs basketball, it is a different animal. So I don't want to say expect the Cavaliers to be one and done. Not at all. But, don't be surprised if this is a learning experience. They didn't get it last year, which I really, really wanted them to. And as young as they are, albeit talented, as young as they are, and some of those guys lacking experience, it's not just something you can say, oh, well, that's no big deal. They'll get on the floor and they'll figure it out. It's a totally different animal.
And I think that's why they made the move and Kobe Altman made that splash for Donovan Mitchell, because that's a guy that has been in the playoffs before. Okay, now he saw the team tinker last year. DG, Allen, Mobley, and those play-in games, they look small. They look like the moment was too big for them, and it probably was. So you go and add a guy like Donovan Mitchell, a bona fide superstar. I just pulled up his stats, Chico. In the 2021 playoffs, he played 10 games with the Jazz. He averaged 32.3 points, 5.5 assists, and 4.2 rebounds for the Jazz. I mean, he was just a different machine come playoff time. So the Cavs need to hope that that is the guy that they're getting come playoffs. And I think that's why they made that trade, because what they saw last year, they knew it wasn't going to be good enough to even probably make the playoffs, let alone win a round. Okay, now win 2 rounds. Okay, now make the Eastern, Conference Championship, which I'm not saying they're going to do this season, but I think that Mitchell addition, it changes things. And I think his arrival, it's a superstar league, and the Cavs have a superstar now. Look at the team that they're probably going to play in the first round, the Knicks. Julius Randle, the Nets.
Well, he dropped 57 the other night, but yeah,
the Nets. Bridges is a nice player, but I like Mitchell over both of those guys.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And by the way, 216-626-7901, the Chico Borman Show here on Big Play and on Twitter at Chico Show CLE. I'm with you, Nick Padone, over there producing and chiming in as we go along. And Brett Boone will join us talking baseball in the 2 o'clock hour. One thing about Donovan Mitchell, Nick, and I'm glad you brought him up, he is an incredible player. I mean, incredible player, incredible guy. Just seems like it was the perfect fit. What I do wonder, though, and I was looking at numbers, I think it was on The Athletic, but as far as clutch, like what he's, and that's the one thing. Like, you have your superstar player, and that superstar player, yeah, hopefully is going to lead you in scoring, and you mentioned the numbers, 10 playoff games, 32 points. That's all huge. And I'm not dismissing it, but it's also has to be huge down the stretch, in crunch time, game on the line. That's the guy you're looking to. You have a few other guys, don't get me wrong. Darius Garland and Evan Mobley are great players, but this is where Donovan Mitchell needs to not only, 32 is great, but it's got to be final seconds of a game, you're hitting a game-winning jumper.
Yeah, 7 of those points are coming in the last 2 minutes in the fourth quarter when you need to take over a game. I'm with you. And to take that point a little bit further, we've seen DG have his own struggles with that, and a little bit of a turnover bug late in games, if you will. So I'm with you 100% of the way, Chico. Obviously, it's the first dose. It's the first sample of playoff basketball that we'll see from the Cavs without LeBron in 3 decades. I mean, this is going to be brand new for everybody. Yeah. I'm geeked as well, but I'm still optimistic, cautiously optimistic, but I really do think that Donovan Mitchell factor in that first round, I think we're going to have a pretty fun spring in here, man.
Yeah, I really hope for a deep run, and I think it could definitely happen. It wouldn't surprise anybody if they had a deep run. It's almost, I think what I'm trying to say is temper expectations only because, getting that playoff experience is something a lot of these guys just don't have, or if they do have it, it's not much of it. And that is such a big deal, I think. Once that calendar flips and once the season starts, it's a whole new season. And that's the one area. And, people bring up JB. I think JB's done an amazing job. No doubt about it. I think it's unfair to say, he is that guy that can develop, but can he win? Well, he's, again, much like his guys are learning, he's learning from them. He's learning who does what, who can do what in certain situations. It's about matchups. What did we just say about the NCAA tournament? We'll be talking about that again tomorrow when it resumes. Matchups. Now, the Cavaliers have a lot of teams and a lot of guys that can force a lot of teams into bad matchups. But there are certain things that you've got to do if you're going to win in the postseason. You got to be able to close out games. You get a lead, you got to be able to, put your foot on the gas. And this team doesn't seem to have that right now. Could it all of a sudden emerge, once the playoffs start? Absolutely. Love to see it. But they don't have that killer instinct right now.
And the one thing that you can't do in the playoffs is start blowing leads, because I know this team likes to score in bunches. They have their runs. The Cavalanches, Twitter is always ablaze when they, score a bunch of points at one time. And that is when this team is at their best, and it is a lot of fun. But you can't find yourself down in 13-point holes, 14-point holes, 15-point holes come postseason, because you're going to be in for a little bit of a tough time if that's the case.
Yep, no doubt about it. But make no mistake, this is fun stuff. Cavs have 8 games remaining now. Oddly enough, they have another one with the Brooklyn Nets coming up tomorrow. And the other big news last night, we were talking before last night's game on yesterday's show. Is Jared Allen going to play? He did played pretty well. I mean, limited. He's getting 12 points, 14 rebounds, or something like that, or maybe not that many rebounds, but I thought a very good game. But most importantly, felt good. He had said that what was holding him back more than just the physical part of it was also just the mental part. And he said he would know when he woke up, one day if he was ready to go. And he said he felt that way yesterday. We hope that continues. He's not wearing any kind of protective gear. Some of those guys, they can do it. Some guys are like, get that crap away from me. It messes me up. It fogs up. But, make no mistake, Jared Allen is a difference maker, obviously on the defensive end, but also on the offensive end. And it's not just Jared Allen. It's pairing him with Evan Mobley. So seeing him back, really, really good news.
Yeah, 12 and 14 last night. But like you said, that effort on the defensive side, 2 blocks. If I recall, one was like a monstrous swat out of bounds that had John Michael out of his seat. So, yeah, Jared Allen's impact is, I think that's another X factor come playoff time. Obviously, everybody knows the Cavs are going to go as Donovan Mitchell goes. But how Jared Allen performs when things get tough in those matchups, and other opposing coaches try putting Jared Allen in pick and rolls and try doing different things to equalize him or take him out of the game. We'll see. I think Jared Allen is the perfect center for that, though, because he guards so well. He could move his feet defensively on that perimeter. So
he and Mobley.
Yeah, so that doesn't really stress me out that much. Whereas remember back when the Cavs had LeBron, the Warriors would put Mozgov in hell in those pick and rolls, and it would be the
Mozgov.
end. It would be the end. Mozgov's feet would be stuck in mud.
That's a good trip down memory lane. Gosh, Timofey Mozgov.
I've got all kinds of Cavs trips down memory lane. I do.
Oh, they provided us a lot of great moments, even if they didn't, all correlate or all culminate in championships. It was still, great runs all the way. I was thinking about this as we talk about, clutch players, clutch genes, and how you have to be that team. Somebody has to step up and be that clutch guy. The obvious answer is Donovan Mitchell. Nick, I'm not so sure that I wouldn't say more comfortable. I don't think that's fair to Donovan, because Donovan is a tremendous player. I think I might be just as comfortable with Evan Mobley taking a final shot as I am with Donovan Mitchell. I'm not saying that he has the arsenal Mitchell has, but Evan Mobley's just different. Even when he was struggling a little bit and people were like, oh my gosh, Evan Mobley, you can't take that next step. Still learning the game. One thing about him, though, is he does not rattle. He's just even keel beginning to end.
He's an alien. And that that mindset, that personality is going to be so dangerous once he gets this experience down pat and has played in the big moments before. Because obviously just a one-and-done player at USC. But especially if that last shot is like an elbow fadeaway jumper. Man, when that shot is falling for him, he's unstoppable. If you see Evan Mobley make one of those little fadeaway, jump shots about the elbow of the free throw line, just live bet whatever his points over is, because he's putting up points into the 20s if that's the case.
It's the Chico Borman Show here on Big Play Network. I think we got a field trip going on here at Burke Lakefront Airport.
It's like the Burke Lakefront Amusement Park today is what I think we're in. Some little kids dancing around in the glass, and I think we're entertaining the masses here, Chico, at Burke Lakefront Airport is what we're doing.
There's plenty of history in here. There's plenty of airplanes and model airplanes and famous pilots. The last thing these kids want to be looking at is my bald head. But if they want to, well, hello, and enjoy your field trip here at Burke Lakefront Airport. I feel like an ambassador now.
Yeah.
And enjoy your stay here at Burke Lakefront Airport. It is nice being here. I got to say, when I first heard, before I came out here to see you guys, when I first heard that this is where the studios were, I'm thinking, wait a minute, what? What? I didn't even. But as you walk in here, it's cool. It's really, really cool. If you haven't had a chance to stop on up and check it out, it's really, really neat place. All right.
Want to hit a little breaking news? Go ahead and read that number. And we got a little breaking news, just a little light Browns breaking news from Adam Schefter as free agent linebacker Anthony Walker, who visited this week with the Washington Commanders, has agreed to return to Cleveland on a 1-year contract. Welcome back, AWOC.
And somebody's probably saying, well, that's not, is that earth-shattering? Is that for the Browns and for what we've been talking about, I've been talking about over the last few days as far as leadership, and Nick Shook said it yesterday. Hell yeah, he's important. If he can stay on the field, he is, for a team that, and I know you're tired of hearing me say it, but that's okay. I'm going to keep saying it. For a team that lacks true leadership, and I mean players. I'm not just talking coaches. Players on the field. Anthony Walker is every bit of that, but he's got to be on the field. But no, that's good news. That's good news. Speaking of the Browns, and we're going to get back into baseball. A wild WBC last night culminates with Shohei Ohtani striking out Mike Trout. My goodness, that's Hollywood. And it did come to fruition, and it was incredibly exciting. We'll talk more about that with Brett Boone after the top of the hour and get a little preview of the MLB season. But, Nick, there is apparently another story involving the Browns that is starting to pick up steam, and that is the Browns now, we don't know if the Browns actually are in pursuit, right?
I think we do. So we got word yesterday from Mary Kay Cabot, obviously pretty trustworthy source over there at Cleveland.com, that the Browns are calling. Now, so far, they're not agreeing to meet the price on the Denver Broncos for Jerry Jeudy, or else the deal would have been done. But the Browns are pushing.
Okay, so there's that. Yeah, and I think here's what I've always said. A guy like Andrew Berry, who is very good at his job, more importantly than that, even more so than that, he's very thorough in his job. He's gonna leave no stone unturned. It doesn't surprise me that he's calling on Jerry Jeudy. Now, how serious the discussions are, I guess, is what I'm getting at. And see, I'll be honest with you. I like Jerry Jeudy as a wideout. I mean, Jerry Jeudy, when you go back to his days at Alabama, let's take another guy currently on the Browns that played at Alabama, Amari Cooper. What do they do well? They run route. Jerry Jeudy is an excellent route runner. You say the quarterback situation wasn't the greatest, and we know what happened last year with Russ and everything. But, I think I like Jerry Jeudy, but some of the price tags that people are coming up with, like when you people start talking about trading away a guy like Wyatt Teller to get him, no, I'm sorry. I'm not doing that. Jerry Jeudy is good. I don't think he's elite by any stretch of the imagination. Would it be a nice compliment to Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones? And yeah, absolutely he would. No question he would. But I'm not, man, I am just not ready to be talking about, and I don't know where they started. Probably just here in the media, probably some fans. But, first it was Nick Chubb, and I laughed at that, scoffed at that, as I hope everybody would. And then the next player that kind of became the popular name was Wyatt Teller. I don't know, Nick. I mean, like Shook said yesterday on the show, one thing about Browns fans, they're always looking to upgrade at wide receiver. And that's great. That's great. But within reason. Sure, call on Jerry Jeudy and see if you can get somebody asleep at the wheel, or you can really make a a great deal. But I'm not trading away an elite talent for him.
So what's the most that you would feel comfortable trading away for a talent like Jerry Jeudy? I think that's the next level of this whole discussion and this whole debate, because like you said, Wyatt Teller definitely a bit much, Nick Chubb certainly. I have seen an interesting argument out there about Wyatt Teller, like, isn't this what you're paying Bill Callahan all the money for? We hear he's one of the top paid assistants in football. He's definitely one of the best, if not the best, offensive line mind in football.
Might be, yeah.
So you could draft, another right guard or just sign another right guard, and you hope that Bill Callahan with Kevin Stefanski's, kind of zone run scheme could turn that guy into a stud. But I'm with you. I'm not trading, a guy that was a Pro Bowl, All-Pro right guard for a receiver that has never put up 1,000-yard season. I get that Jerry Jeudy is good. Last year, he would have been the Browns' number 2 leading receiver in terms of yardage, just behind Amari Cooper. That's probably what would happen or what will happen if the Browns acquire him. But I'm just not there to trade, to start taking away pieces of your strength.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
And I get the argument about Bill Callahan, okay? I've heard that many times. You hear that a lot. Like, well, you can draft somebody. Okay, you got to have, first of all, Wyatt Teller brings a couple things to the table that, if you could find that in some dude walking down 9th Street, then go ahead and grab him. But he's big, he's strong, he's physical, he's athletic. He has And I don't dismiss this, okay? I'm going to say this, and people probably roll their eye. Well, is that really a big deal? He's got a nastiness to him. And I need my offensive lineman to have nasty to him. Wyatt Teller, to me, is a nasty dude. Especially when Nick Chubb is still one of the best running backs in the game, and he's in your backfield. And you still, regardless of having Deshaun Watson, I don't know exactly what Kevin Stefanski's thinking about, what the offense is going to look like or what he wants, but you still have all the ingredients for a great running game. A great running game. You have a stellar back. You have good depth behind him, even if Kareem Hunt's not going to be there. And you have an offensive line that is tailor-made through their strength, through their brawn, through their athleticism and ability to get to the next level and all that, to really, just make them a formidable team. And then, oh, by the way, yeah, you have Deshaun Watson. The one thing that bothers me is when I hear people say, well, you don't need to worry about the run game as much now because you have Deshaun Watson. No, I'm not doing that. I want balance. Now, I know you can't have everybody because somebody's out there going, okay, Chico, well, you're going to have to give up something to get something. And yeah, but I just don't know, should Jerry Jeudy be that much of a prize? He's good. He's a good route runner, but here's the thing. The receiver class, and just from a draft standpoint, this year, next year, for God, as many years as we can look into the future, the receiver class is going to be loaded. It always will be. So that's where I say, Nick, instead of putting it on and saying, well, if you trade Wyatt Teller, hey, that's Bill Callahan's baby, he can bring somebody in. I say, look, you're getting thoroughbreds at wide receiver that because it's so loaded, you're able to get in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. And if you can't develop those guys, and some of them hit the ground running and are ready to go, pardon the pun, then what are you doing? Then you drafted the wrong guy. So Jerry Jeudy is a very good wide receiver. Please don't get me wrong on this, but I'm going to have to temper my enthusiasm as far as who I'm willing to give up.
Say it was only like 42, the 42nd pick in the NFL draft, and then a player like Harrison Bryant. Then what would your reaction be?
Easy, 100%. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you are on board with it. You're just not willing to mortgage key cornerstone players. And I feel like much of Brown's Twitter and much of the internet out there listening to you right now agrees.
Yeah, I think if you can get, again, I keep going back to Amari Cooper with him, but they are very similar. And I think a lot of those, you talk about certain, used to be linebackers at Penn State. It used to be, well, now it's defensive linemen at Ohio State. But, receivers at Alabama, since Nick Saban has taken over, like they do a couple of things very, very well, which is no surprise because it's Nick Saban. They are absolutely very detail-oriented. They run tremendous routes, and they're very physical if they need to be. They're not afraid to throw a block. They're not afraid to, throw a guy around that's trying to, press him up on the line of scrimmage. So Jerry Jeudy embodies a lot of that. And I definitely like his talent level. I definitely like what he brings to the table. But, yeah, if you're talking about Harrison Bryant and 42, all right, I'm absolutely on board.
Here's another point that I kind of want to bring to your attention, and I feel like not a lot of people have factored this in. Jerry Jeudy is probably the contingency plan for life without Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
When you think about Cooper, just go on Google, look up that Sport Track or whatever the website's called, and look up Amari Cooper's contract. There's a lot of money at the butt end of that deal that Andrew Berry's probably going to want to rework, and if he can't rework it, sorry, Amari, we got your replacement and a fellow alum in Jerry Jeudy.
And this is where, another good point. This is where, what's going on with the development of some of these guys? Like, let's just face the music here. They may have completely missed the ball on Anthony Schwartz. I think when he was drafted, we were all, myself included, like, wow, this isn't just speed. This is Olympic caliber, world caliber speed. He can just absolutely fly. We heard Nick Shook say it yesterday in the show as well, and I've said it many times too, that there's so much more to it. There is no route tree. I mean, and
straight.
Yeah, and I know some of that is, well, he hasn't been able to stay on the field, but hey, that's another knock. Unfortunately, you've got to be durable. You got to be on the field to actually make an impact. So, Anthony Schwartz, that was a 4th-round pick, and for all intents and purposes, for me, I'd love to see him succeed. I think he's going to be a bust. Donovan Peoples-Jones, okay, can he take that next step? David Bell is not a blazer by any means, but could he be a good possession receiver? Sure, but these guys, much like we're talking about the young guys on the D-line, whether it be, Perrion Winfrey, whether it be Jordan Elliott, whether it be Tommy Togiai, while we keep talking about those guys needing to take that next step and get better, right now, some of these young wide receivers, Donovan Peoples-Jones, I thought did last year. I thought, there were a couple games where, and you started to see him really, become that downfield threat, dominant threat, and a guy that's not afraid to go up and get the football. But they need more of that, and they need that Donovan Peoples-Jones, that DPJ, to take his game to another level as well. 216-626-7901, 216-626-7901 if you want to join in that conversation.
I think what a lot of this Anthony Walker thing does, though, too, as we kind of tie these two together and, keep talking Browns, I think this Anthony Walker re-addition, it completely alleviates their need, at least in the immediate, for a middle linebacker. Now, do you feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more flexible moving on from that 42nd pick in the NFL draft for Jerry Jeudy? I think probably yes. And in that situation, even without a first-round pick, Andrew Berry should probably have all the leverage in the world, Chico. The phone call should go like this. Ring, ring, ring. Oh, it's George Payton from the Broncos. Oh, what up, George? It's AB. George, you don't have a first-round pick this year. You don't have a first-round pick next year because you traded it for Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. You also don't have a second-round pick this year or a second-round pick next year either. Take my second-round pick. Take Harrison Bryant. And send me my 23-year-old wide receiver that's going to be the DeAndre Hopkins to my Deshaun Watson here in Cleveland. Now that's a thought.
Now that is, dare I say it, that is a scorching hot take here on the Chico Borman Show, courtesy of Nick Padone.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that was good stuff. All right, so if you want to chime in on that, you can do it. As I said, coming up top of the hour, we're going to get back into baseball, the World Baseball Classic. Phenomenal stuff last night. We talked about it. Everybody was talking about it nationwide. Could it be the script? Could it be that Shohei Ohtani is on the mound late in the game and he has to retire Mike Trout late in the game? Well, that was it. I mean, Mike Trout was the final out, and Shohei Ohtani, my goodness gracious, the radar gun reading triple digits. He's snapping off a couple of sliders that were downright filthy. And in my mind, establishing himself, if he hasn't, I think he had already. What do you think? You know what? Here's a question. Why do you think there is a lack of talk about Shohei Ohtani? Like the biggest reason why there isn't more talk about Shohei Ohtani being the best player in baseball, because there really shouldn't even be a conversation when you talk about everything he does. He might not be the most exciting to some, but you're talking about a guy that dominates like you did when you were 12 years old in Little League playing shortstop and pitching. Like this is Major League Baseball, for God's sake, and he's dominating at that type of level.
Yeah, I have no answer for you. I really racked my brain on the whole thing. I know we got into it a little bit the other day. You know, is it the fact that he is from Japan, you know, not a native English speaker? I don't know, because I feel like that shouldn't stop the talk. Okay, maybe that stops his marketability, but even then, I think I see more Shohei Ohtani than I see Mike Trout right now.
Yeah, and both of them play for whom?
Right. That's tough. Like if Shohei Ohtani was a Dodger, if he was a Yankee, if he was a Met even, would we hear more about him, hear more from him?
Oh, yeah.
Which blows my mind, because the Angels, you're in Anaheim. You're 10-minute drive from LA, from Hollywood. Like, it blows my mind. I don't know.
Artie Moreno has made some very head-scratching deals over the years. And, you know, you heard it with Mike Trout. And that's another thing, too. That I know there's some people out there that have kind of Mike Trout, what do I want to say? They're just kind of they're kind of tired of hearing about Mike Trout, not because he's not great, but they've always heard, you know, and it's somewhat true. Oh, it's not Trout's fault that Artie Moreno doesn't know how to build a team. We should be able to see Mike Trout on these bigger stages so he can, you know, display that immense talent that he possesses. But see, then when you get that opportunity, and okay, I know it's not a World Series game, I know it's not the playoffs, but it's still pretty big. I mean, last night was pretty big. You know, it's okay, it's the WBC, but these teams, it means a great deal to. And I don't care what anybody says. Mike Trout absolutely, positively wanted to get the best of Shohei Ohtani there. Not just because, hey, he wants to help the U.S. win, which absolutely is true, but, you know, he knows. Like, this is something that we're going to be seeing and talking about for a long, long time. It's going to be brought up to both those guys for, you know, basically all season. I mean, imagine them, they come to Cleveland. You think writers aren't going to be, so what did that feel like? Be like Keith Morrison on Dateline. Oh, he struck out against Shohei Ohtani. What did that feel like? Like, he's going to get that over and over and over again, and I'm sure it's got to bother him. He's a competitor.
You know what else we're going to start hearing a lot more about this season in terms of Shohei Ohtani? That contract, free agency time. Yeah. If there's one thing fans in any sport love, baseball is no exception. Look at what we just did all year with Aaron Judge.
Yep.
Shohei Ohtani in that last year of his contract with the Angels, just 28 years old. He's going to be due for quite a payday, a historic payday, if you will.
And he says he loves it out west, and I don't doubt that. I mean, it is L.A. I know it's L.A. It's Southern California, and I mean, my God, of course you're going to love it. I'm sure he loves playing with Mike Trout, but yeah, there's a couple of things here. If you're Shohei Ohtani, you have a chance to take your stardom, and I don't know how he feels about this. Like, if you're an agent, you're his agent, you're saying to Shohei Ohtani, okay, look, I know what maybe you want and what you're comfortable with, but, man, if you get to a New York or you get to a Boston or something, your star is just you're going to be it. People are going to be able to see you every night. They're going to be talking about you every night. Shohei Ohtani, a lot of times, you know, it's a 10-10 first pitch, right? People wake up and, yeah, I mean, if you're a baseball fan like myself and others, you're certainly curious to what he did. For me, back when I was doing the show till midnight, I would get up or get off work and still be able to watch him. But, you realize most people can't stay up that late. So it was more like, oh, wow, you look at the box score and he pitched 7 1/3, struck out 13, got the win. And then the next night, he's going to be designated hitter and he's got, 35 home runs on the year. I don't know why that seems to go under the radar. And the only thing that I can think of is that it is because he's out west. And not just out west, but he's playing for a team out west that isn't very good. Because even like the Dodgers, they get a lot of run. They get a lot of talk because of all their talent. And even the Padres, remember when Tatis was healthy and every morning you woke up, it was like, uh-oh, did Fernando Tatis have another bat flip? Did he have another crazy home run, a majestic home run? I'll be curious to see what does happen with Ohtani, because he's not a guy that's real. And I don't want to say Ichiro, and Booney will be able to chime in on this because he played with him. But Ichiro, while he was definitely aware, and he was in Japan he was a cult hero. My goodness, he didn't strike me as somebody that, well, I need to be, in the biggest market. Because sometimes, guys like that don't speak English they don't really want to be in that market. Even Jose has said, now Jose could easily play in any market, but I think Jose likes the fact that, hey, I've got my translator here. The fans here love me. The organization loves me. They finally decided they're going to push all the chips out there and pay me, and I'm comfortable. So there is something to be said for that. But man, oh man, to think about what he's doing, I just feel like it's downright criminal that we are not talking more about Shohei Ohtani and all of the talents that he has and that's been on display in his short career over here.
Maybe that changes this year. Maybe it's, I don't know. And again, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, trying to think of reasons why that we don't talk about him more. At least you don't hear more about him nationally. Maybe it's a longevity thing. Maybe people kind of thought that it was a little bit of a flash in the pan, and we definitely heard a lot of that early is, okay, well, you got to pick one. You got to pitch or you got to hit. And he's been able to keep this up now for how many seasons?
Yeah, and he won't be able to do it for many, many more.
Right. Especially when that new contract hits, you're not going to want him to be, doing this. But damn, that is kind of a bummer because that's what makes it so fun.
Yeah, and to me, that's where the attraction is. Like, I think it's almost like enjoy him now because, yeah, he's not going to be able to keep doing what he's doing, from the mound and at the plate for, the next 5-6 years. But, my God, the fact that he's even doing this with all of the talent in Major League Baseball, with all of the great talent and all these great teams. And this guy's able to dominate like it was 1927, like it was 1920 with George Herman Ruth. It's just, it absolutely blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. So we'll talk to Booney here coming up at the top of the hour about that. Can you believe it? 1 week from tomorrow, the Major League Baseball season is underway. Hopefully this is going to be a fun spring into summer because we got the Cavs obviously in the postseason, and you've got the Guardian season after a year where they had 17 guys, 17 make their Major League debuts, and still won 92 games. Now you bring a lot of those guys back, and they have a year under their belt, and okay, yeah, the book's out on them a little bit more, but still, that's a special club. I really think Cleveland, it's interesting they open up with Seattle because I think Cleveland and Seattle are very, very similar in many ways. But, yeah, just to think about what this summer could evolve into is certainly very, very exciting. All right, 216-626-7901. Also tomorrow, NCAA tournament is back and ready to go, and we've got some great games, obviously with the Sweet 16. I think of the 4 tomorrow, and you've got Michigan State, Kansas State is the early game, 6:30 tip. 7:15, Arkansas, UConn. I think that was the one that our buddy Terrence Oglesby said he's really looking forward to the most. That's going to be a good one. Yeah, that one's going to be a good one. FAU, Tennessee. Yeah, I mean, if FAU can continue it, God bless them. And then the late game, Gonzaga and UCLA. I don't think Gonzaga. I think it's a game, but Gonzaga is just not good defensively. And I know UCLA is a little banged up. I don't think that game's going to be as tight as maybe a lot of people are saying. I could be dead wrong on that. So, I mean, if there's one game to pick from tomorrow night, Michigan State, Kansas State, I think is going to be good. But for me, I think I'm with Terrence. I think Arkansas, UConn could end up being a phenomenal West Region Sweet 16 game.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the Izzo factor, man. I'm going to be on that Michigan State game for sure. We do have a little bit more, I guess, kind of Browns free agent news if we want it. Breaking news. Shefty's on fire here. Breaking news from ESPN's Adam Schefter. Former Browns free agent running back Dearness Johnson reached agreement on a 1-year deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
He's good back.
Good for Dearness.
Yeah, good back and with more of an opportunity. I think, and that's the thing. You look at the backfield the last couple of years. I mean, you weren't going to be able to keep everybody, and that's fine. But Dearness Johnson, Jerome Ford, I think is going to end up being somebody that the Browns really, really like.
I hope so.
Yeah. Good for Dearness. I think he's a guy. And first of all, his story's incredible. I mean, on the fishing boat, and and then he gets an opportunity, and he absolutely runs with it. So you hope that continues, and wish him all the best against, or I should say, with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
A little bit of a homecoming for Dearness as well, as he's a Florida native. So
he is a Floridian.
It's always cool to see. And he'll probably have a little bit of an opportunity. I just pulled up the Jags depth chart. Behind ETN, they got JaMychal Hasty, who was good for the Niners, but didn't do much last year in Jacksonville. Snoop Connor and Mekhi Sargent.
Yeah, if you can't even say his name,
I've never heard of him. If you never even have seen him on the fantasy football waivers, you probably don't got to worry about it.
Right, exactly. Travis Etienne is interesting because I don't, again, remember the debacle with Urban Meyer. Like, everybody needed to recover from that. Etienne, I really liked him at Clemson. I mean, he was a great back, and kind of similar to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I thought very similar in style. And I still feel like he can be that guy, but I think Dearness Johnson, I mean, I don't think it would shock anybody, because Dearness Johnson can catch the ball out of the backfield too. Maybe not as well or was as prolific doing it when he was at Clemson, but still very much an opportunity to get some snaps. So good for Dearness Johnson as he signs with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We are going to step aside here at the Chico Borman Show on Big Play, and when we come back, mention the baseball season set to begin a week from tomorrow. Last night, an unbelievable finish in the WBC. We all wanted it to happen, hoped it would happen. A lot of times those things don't usually come to fruition. They did. Shohei Ohtani versus Mike Trout. We're going to talk to the former All-Star second baseman, one of my favorite guys, Brett Boone, host of the Brett Boone podcast. We'll talk to him next after a minute break here on the Chico Borman Show.
audiences from Chico After Dark?
We hope so. We hope so. We are
Okay.
back. We are live here. The Chico Borman Show on the Big Play Networks. Also on Twitter. You can find us at Chico Show CLE. Also bigplay.com. YouTube, the Chico Borman Show. Very, very excited to talk some baseball. As I said, we are 1 week, well, tomorrow, 1 week from tomorrow, Major League Baseball season will get underway. What better primer than the World Baseball Classic and last night, Japan against the United States, Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. Mentioned that it'll all get underway in Major League Baseball a week from tomorrow. It will be the Cleveland Guardians against the Seattle Mariners. This guy had plenty of success, a lot of success with the Seattle Mariners. If you could bring him up there, Nick. And well, wait a minute. You're not Ichiro. I was told I had a super.
I'm still in his shadow. It's unbelievable, Chico.
I mean, we're obviously very grateful to have Brett Boone, the former All-Star second baseman, joining us, but I was under the impression that it was going to be Ichiro. It's good to see you, though, Booney. How you been, pal?
Oh, I appreciate that. I've been good, Chico. How you doing? New platform, love it.
Thank you.
Look great.
Thank you. Even if that part's not true, that I need to borrow. Can I borrow some of that hair next time you get a haircut? No.
No.
You
I'm
got
blessed.
the goat going too, man. It's looking.
Now, how funny is this? I mean, I'm just one of those kids growing up where I still don't have the complete man hair. So this is like a big time effort to get this far. I don't know. I think it's at the end of its road, but this is as much as I got for you.
Does it itch?
It does, and I think about it because I've never been a facial hair guy.
Right.
You know, my kids make fun of me like, Dad, what are you trying to do? But it's amazing to me. I've been growing this for like 2 weeks, and it feels like I got a cat sitting on my face. And I look at those guys out there with the big beards, and I'm thinking, how do they do it? So we're definitely in the tryout phase, but I don't know. I think I'm going to nix it soon.
He is Brett Boone. Again, follow him on Twitter at TheBoone29. Also, you can check out his podcast. We're going to be talking much more about that later on in the show. The Boone Podcast, very aptly named. And matter of fact, one of our own, Nick, I don't know if you knew this or not, one of our own, Bernie Kosar. I can refer to him as a colleague now because he's also on the Big Play Network. He joined Brett on the podcast.
Saw that.
I'll be honest with you, Booney. You and I have known each other quite a while. Have you on? Does Bernie's resume present something that mine doesn't? I'm just kind of. I mean, I have no problem with you having Bernie. He's one of my idols growing up.
Are you trying to get on the Boone podcast, Chico?
Well,
I'm
just thinking that I know Bernie's a star, but I don't know. I thought we had something, but that's all right.
Bernie was great. He was really interesting because a lot of these guys, especially football. As athletes coming through the ranks, you usually don't interact with the other sports because our off season is their main season. So usually when we link up and mix with peers, it's usually at off season events, and so it's really interesting for me to get guys like Bernie Kosar. Obviously, I grew up watching him. But then he had a really interesting story. So
you can check that out on the Brett Boone podcast. So be sure to check that out, and we'll get more into that in a moment. All right, Booney, go back to last night. Like I said, sometimes we try to script these things in sports, and sometimes it plays out and it's magical, and that's why we watch. And then sometimes, it just doesn't work out that way. Last night worked out that way. Shohei Ohtani versus Mike Trout. Ohtani gets the best of him. Now, you and I have had this conversation many times. In my mind, there is no question the best player in Major League Baseball is Shohei Ohtani. You want to give Aaron Judge the MVP last year? That's fine. He had an incredible year. But when we're talking about two-way players, I mean, we haven't talked about that since like Babe Ruth. Is he not the best player in Major League Baseball, Shohei Ohtani?
By far. If he stays healthy, he's the automatic MVP. Aaron Judge, I'm taking nothing away. One of the great players of the game today, Yankee captain, had an unbelievable. I mean, he hit 62 home runs. That's a different level. But when it comes to the MVP, it doesn't matter to me. It's Shohei Ohtani, and it wasn't even close. I think Chico, myself, and you are in the minority of that
We are.
opinion around the game of baseball.
Yep.
But when I was playing, my thoughts were, well, you kind of had to be on a first place team that got your team to the playoffs. But in modern day, Mike Trout's won it several times without winning the division, without going to the playoffs. So if it's just the most valuable player, no one's even close to Shohei. I mean, he's not only, even if he was an average hitter and an average pitcher, let's say he hits in the 7 hole in the lineup and is the number 4 starter. That in itself is ridiculous, playing 2 ways at the highest level, Major League Baseball. But the fact that he does it at a star level on both sides of the ball is something we've never seen before, and I don't know if we'll see it again in our time. Now, he's kind of opened the door to that 2 way, so I think the industry will be open to that next 2 way player. I think in the past we haven't been because we thought it was impossible. I sit there and I know how hard it is in the big leagues to hit and play every day, but then if you're a starting pitcher, you have a whole different program you're on in between starts. He's got to combine both of those. In one way I was thinking about it, I'm trying to break Shohei down. Maybe it's a blessing for him because it's so mental. So if he has a rough start as a pitcher, well, he can go out and hit a 3-run homer and get his mind off that, and vice versa when he's not hitting, because you're not always going to hit. That's the one thing in sports. Even the greatest of the great is going to go through their slumps at the plate. He can still take the mound and shove, once every 5 days. So it's unbelievable. I'm amazed every time I watch him. The only thing I think about, and I think I've mentioned this to you, is it's like I want to put bubble wrap around him because you're just waiting. When is this kind of fairy tale going to end? Can anybody possibly keep this up? But why we got him, I think we should really appreciate what a show he's putting on. Pretty cool.
Former All-Star second baseman Brett Boone joining us here on the Chico Borman Show. Glad to have him. World Baseball Classic. Did you spend a lot of time watching? What was your interest level for it?
I spent a little going into it. It grew on me as it progressed. Going into it, I put myself in the position of being a player. I think if you're asked as a player, I think it's almost you kind of have to do it. But then you put it in context. It's March. We're in spring training. We're getting ready. I'm used to going to the ballpark, and maybe I'm going to get 2 at bats today, play 4 innings, and then I'm gonna go and get my work done. Come back to do it another day. I might not play the next day. I might. The schedule being 162 games and a postseason. If you're fortunate enough to go to the postseason, that's a long season. You go to the WBC, these aren't spring training games. These aren't getting our work in games. And as you saw and all the fans saw, it was a playoff type atmosphere. And you're going for it. I think what I saw, it was interesting. You saw a little rust from the pitchers. They're not used to being in these positions in March. But when I look at the big picture, I think it's so good for the game of baseball. I think to bring countries together like this and everybody watching this tournament, I think it did. Baseball made tremendous strides with this WBC. I think they did a great job putting it together. Everybody got what they wanted. Everybody expected it was probably going to be Japan and USA in the final game. It was. I mean, the storybook ending is the Ohtani Trout. As players, we don't look at that as a big deal, but from a fan standpoint, you couldn't have higher drama. It was pretty cool. Ohtani gets the MVP of the tournament, which he didn't get last year, which he should have. But I think overall, total package, great for the game of baseball. That was a home run.
Okay, so you said it that if you're asked as a player, you most likely you have to go ahead and do it, and we understand that. And you also, if you're an owner, if you're a manager, or you're within the organization, of course, now I'm going to deviate. I'm going to go to the New York Mets. I mean, they've got Stephen Cohen emptied the bank and then some to sign all these players, including extending his closer Edwin Diaz, and now he's out for the season. Is that just, hey, it's just bad luck, or is that something that needs to be looked at?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's tough in the argument, and I've heard this argument, and it kind of rings hollow with me, is, well, you could get hurt in spring training. Of course, you get hurt in spring training, but spring training, especially for a veteran player, I go into spring training and Chico, don't get me wrong. If we're playing wiffle ball in the backyard, the competitive, uh, the competitive side of me, I want to get a hit every time I get up. But as you become a veteran player, you go to spring training with an approach. My approach is to be ready for opening day when the bell rings. So that means getting my timing down. I'm getting, at the beginning, I might be getting an AB and getting out of there and getting my work in. As it progresses, I'll be getting 2 at bats. Near the end, I might be getting 3 at bats, but it's not that highest level of intensity competition that starts on opening day. It's get through the spring, remain healthy, get your timing down so when it counts, it counts. And I've come back from a lot of spring training games going 0 for 2, but that second at bat, I found something and I'm getting closer to being game ready. So I just don't think the intensity's there. You're not going to take the huge chances that you would normally take when you get to the WBC. I mean, look at that. These guys are playing all out like it was game 7. It was really cool to watch as a fan. But the percentages of getting hurt in a WBC when you're really playing and the percentages of a spring training, very, very different. It's almost like the Pro Bowl. You're not really going to get hurt. Pro Bowl is a little bit different than a Super Bowl, and that's kind of the closest. It may not be that apropos, but it's the closest scenario I can get to a spring training, couple AB games versus Japan USA last night.
So one more thing, as we talk about that game, the ratings haven't come out. I'm guessing they're going to be just gigantic, but they said prior to last night, the most watched baseball game in history is Game 6 of the 1980 World Series between the Philadelphia Phillies and the Kansas City Royals. Phillies, of course, their first World Series title. Your old man, Bob Boone, you may have heard the name Boone, folks. Around. They've got a few of them. But your old man was the catcher. We all remember Tug McGraw getting that strikeout and jumping in the air, and your old man was behind the dish. Does he talk about that? Because I'm just curious. Like, I think back to that game, I would have never guessed 55 million people in the most watched, but it was Philly. There was a lot of drama, and you had characters like a Tug McGraw on the mound for the final out.
You got Tug McGraw, you got Pete Rose at first. There were characters all over the field for that series. Obviously, some of my fondest memories were growing up in Philadelphia and tagging along with Dad, going to Veterans Stadium with that cast on that team. Great team, but man, a lot of personalities, a lot of big personalities. Tug being probably the biggest of them all. I was one of those viewers, and wow, what a time! I look back and I talk about this all the time. During my career, I was blessed to play a long time. I got to do some really cool things, All-Star games, World Series, but some of my fondest memories still today are from those years of tagging along with Dad, going to the ballpark, hanging out with the players. I probably drove them all crazy, but at the same time, they made my childhood pretty darn special. I remember that night. The next day, we were on the float. I was on the float. I remember that. And, back then as a kid, you kind of take it for granted. And you think, well, this is what I do. I go to work with my dad. Doesn't everybody get to do this? When you get a little bit older and reflect back on your childhood a little bit, you realize how special it was. Really cool time, special group of guys. And obviously, Dad won his first or his only World Series as a player. But it was really cool being there, being a part of it, getting to go in the locker room after the game, celebrate. I probably had my first beer that night, Chico. But
you had a champagne
cool
shower for sure, no doubt about
that.
Yeah. All right, he is Brett Boone, 14 seasons in Major League Baseball, 3-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glover, which I'm looking over your left shoulder. It looks like one of those Gold Gloves you have there displayed. Is there any way, I watch Dan Patrick occasionally, and he'll get gifts for the man cave. Now, his man cave is very expansive, and, but it would mean a lot, Booney, if you could maybe on loan or even donate one of your Gold Gloves to the Chico Borman Show and have it displayed here on set.
What do I get out of it?
I can get you. What can we get?
I'll tell you what. Have your people call my people. Maybe we'll work something out.
You used to say that all the time last year, and I told you
I,
I don't have people. We have good people here,
hey,
so I do.
quit. Hey, quit. You're exposing me here. I'm using lines from a year ago, but fresh audience, fresh new platform. I figure nobody's ever heard me say that before.
Well, you could. I'd send. What can we, my mousse, my hairspray. What? I don't know. What can we?
We'll see if, like I said, I'd like to let my people handle that.
All right, we'll talk about it, but we definitely like to get one of those Gold Gloves in the studio here. All right, 1 week from tomorrow, Major League Baseball will be starting up. Cleveland will be in Seattle. Two very good teams. Two teams near and dear to both our hearts. Of course, you had some of your best years, including 2001, 331. How do you, folks, seriously, you bet 331, hit 37 bombs, and drive in 141, and you end up third in the MVP voting. I'm sorry. And I know Ichiro is the sensei.
I saw Ichiro recently. We were over in I went over to Mariners camp, and still to this day I joke with him about it. He came back. We said hi. I hadn't seen him in a couple years. And I said, you got my trophy, right, from 2001. And he kind of looks at me, and he just kind of gives me that Ichiro look and says, it is my trophy.
It is my trophy.
You can go back and forth on it. Yeah. I learned that, though, Chico, as a player. The awards are nice, and the Gold Gloves are great. The Silver Sluggers, believe me, I was ecstatic when I won them. But I realized a long time ago, you can do what you do on the field, and then it's out of your hands. It's on other people's hands whether you win those awards. So I've never really, I don't know. It'd be nice to have that 2001 MVP award, but
I'd ask for that instead of the Gold Glove. I'd want the MVP here in the studio instead.
Well, the MVP is pretty cool. I can send you my Mariners MVP trophy from that year because I was the Mariners MVP in 2001.
That'll work. We won't get. I tell you what. We'll start small, Booney. And not that was a small achievement, but yeah, we'll start small. That was kind of
no. It was an unbelievable year for me, not only personally but team wise. Ichiro came on the scene, had an unbelievable rookie season. And Jason Giambi, who was the big dog with the Oakland A's at that time, he had an equal year to myself at the plate. I mean, he was just a huge factor for that A's team. But once again, there's a lot of it's subjective. It's out of your control. You win some, you lose some. I've been to some All-Star games. I've gotten snubbed at a few. All of us do. It's not like I'm sitting here playing the violin for myself. It happens every year in every sport, and you just got to move on and not worry about stuff like that. What matters is what those teammates think of you, and when the bell rang, what did you do for the next 9 innings? And as long as you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I did everything I could, I played the game right. That's all you can. And the awards come and go, but there's nothing you can really hang your hat on and play for an award. Because if you're going to play for an award, you're going to be disappointed more times than not.
You'd probably be labeled. I don't know if they used this label back then, but certainly today, you'd definitely be a dirtbag. I mean that in a very, nice sort of way.
Probably. I had a little flair to me, but that was more of an act, more of a shtick. I was just kind of hard nosed, especially when I was a young player. I mean, I was a house on fire and just angry all the time if I didn't get a hit every at bat. Everything had to be perfect. And in this game, I mellowed out over the years and realized and was humbled several times and realized how hard this game is. And I grew up a little bit, but I like to have fun playing. But at the same time, I have a job to do, and that's to bust my ass for 9 innings every night. And hopefully I did that.
All right, so we've got new rules in the picture. We've been talking about this for a while. We knew they were in the making. You got a pitch clock. You've got bigger bases, so maybe more stolen bases. Brett Boone's thoughts on the new rules implemented by MLB. Does it make a big difference? Is it?
I'm coming. Well, here's the thing. I'm a purist at heart. I like to keep the game as natural as it was 100 years ago. I want to keep as much of that as we can. I think that's what makes Major League Baseball Major League Baseball. That being said, I'm also a realist. It's 2023. Things are going to change. Technology is going to come along. as the rules are implemented. A lot of the times I say the rules are made by the baseball rules are made by non-baseball people for the most part, and not always made for the best product. I don't think the big bases silly to me. At the same time, you took away. You can't take out a second baseman when you're turning a double play. That's a big pet peeve of mine. I think that's how second baseman we separate ourselves from the great to the average, the guys that can turn that big double play. Nowadays, you have to slide right into the base, so anybody can turn a double play. Uh, that being said, with the new rules of the instant replay, and the technology is so unbelievable that you've got to be on that base physically. You can't be in the area play like we used to have. So I think the big base is good for the defenders at second base. As far as an advantage, I think it's going to be a little bit of an advantage for the offensive player, especially going first to second, first to third with the bigger base. You're going to get there a couple inches quicker, and that may be the difference in 1 or 2 plays a year. Bases, whatever. I don't understand it. They say it's a safety thing. Could be. Pitch clock, the big one that everybody's talking about.
Yep.
I've talked to my brother about it. He likes it. I had David Ross, the Cubs skipper, on the podcast recently about a weekend to the new rules when I had him on. He loved it. He loved the swiftness of it. I was like I mentioned earlier, I was over in camp at the Mariners for a day. I went up into the booth with Rick Riz and was going to do a couple innings with him. It ended up being 4 innings. The innings were going so fast. I don't know what quite to make of it yet. I got a lot of questions. I think from an offensive standpoint, as hitters, it's not going to be that big of an adjustment. It's going to take probably spring training, but something in your mind to go, oh yeah, I can't take my time and piddle around. I got to get back in the box.
Did you have a routine that you were dead set with getting in?
I did, but I wasn't one of those guys that took a ton of time, and I wasn't the fastest guy. I didn't keep my toehold, as they'd call it. I didn't stay in the box, but I didn't take a ton of time. So I think that adjustment for me wouldn't really be a big deal. I just have to have the mindset I got to be ready quicker than normal. I do see it for the pitchers. I see some problems coming up, and I think they're going to have to tweak it and make some adjustments as we play on. They're just feeling it out right now, but I got a lot of questions. That sign, the manager giving the sign to the third base coach, relaying it to the hitter. You have confusion once in a while. What's going to happen? It doesn't matter. You've got to get in the box. Pitchers, big situation. Game 6, bases loaded. They're not ready. They can't get in sync with their catcher. You have to deliver the pitch. So I think there's some tweaking that's going to have to be done. I remember the first violation was Manny Machado taking too long, and there was a strike 3 called the first week of spring training. There was headlines about it. You had Manny laughing it off, and I thought, yeah, we're laughing in spring training. But when it costs you a game in the regular season, when it counts, I don't think it's going to be very funny to those players. I see the pitchers all the time. And I think from a fan's perspective, we don't want to see a game end on a clock violation. We prided ourselves always, Major League Baseball players, as we're the only major sports without a clock. We're not on the clock. Now we're on the clock. So I don't know. From a fan's perspective, whether it's your team or not your team, you don't want to see a game ended that way. So I think it's going to be a trial and error thing. Yeah, it's definitely going to speed up the game. Like I said, my brief time in the booth, it was amazing to me how fast the innings went. I think you're going to have guys putting more balls in play, maybe not at a huge percentage, but I think that's just going to be a result of the speed up process. It'll be interesting to see the shift. They're still going to push the envelope and shift as much as they can without violating that rule. I don't know. I wasn't a shift guy. I don't like the shift, but at the same time, I'm from the school of I don't think you should be able to tell a team how to defense or how not to defense. But then again, nobody really cares what I think.
Oh,
because
sure,
a lot of these rules wouldn't be in place. But it's going to be interesting. We got to kind of roll with the punches, and this is just the game evolving, and it's a different game now. It's still a great game, but we'll just have to see. I think it's going to just be a matter of wait and see if the fans really like it. I haven't heard that much complaining from the players. So if the players are on board, most importantly, do the fans like it? If the fans like it, it's going to be here to stay.
4-time All-Star Brett Boone, second baseman, joining us here on the Chico Borman Show. Before we get to the podcast and your podcast and what's coming up, one last thing. Now, next week we're going to be doing, and hopefully every Wednesday we'll be able to hook up with you, as I so much enjoyed last year, and I know the fans did. Hopefully we'll be able to do that again this year, and next week we'll really get into predictions and all of that. But a sneak peek, because, again, Cleveland opens up in Seattle. Booney, those are two very intriguing teams. They might not be the favorites in their respective leagues, in the American League, I should say, but those are two teams that could make a lot of noise, and maybe some similarities between those two clubs.
I think they're very similar. I've started to do my preseason, digging in and watching the players that are moving franchise, going to different teams and kind of evaluate. I've looked at the Mariners. I've looked at the Indians. Indians obviously surprised me last year. I picked, like a lot of people picked, the White Sox to win that division. Cleveland ends up winning 92 games and winning that division. I was impressed. I look at their pitching staff, still very talented bullpen. Probably have the best closer in the game out there in Class A. And you got the X factor, Ramirez. There's something special about that guy, the third baseman for the Indians. And whenever you got him, you had some young players come to the forefront, and Jimenez. I think they're very similar teams. Indians steal a lot of bases. Mariners don't. Going over to the Mariners division, I think Houston's still the team to beat. Yeah. I think if you put a gun to my head today and said pick the World Series winner, I've got to pick the Houston Astros. They lost Verlander, but that starting rotation's so deep, that bullpen's so deep. Up and down the lineup, I think the most astute hitters in all the game reside in Houston. So I'd have to pick them. But the Mariners have come a long way, and I think the Mariners are one of the best teams in baseball. I think they're a top 5 team, and I'm not saying that just because Seattle. Believe me, for 20 years I've been looking at them going, this ain't a good team. All of a sudden, this is a good team.
They are,
and it's going to be interesting. But on the surface, very similar. I think the American League West a little tougher division than the Indians are going to have. So I'm going to pick the Indians to win that division. We'll talk about it more next week. But the Mariners are going to have their work cut out for them if they're going to unseat that Houston Astro team. And Texas is getting better.
Yeah.
DeGrom and Evaldi come over and all of a sudden that starting rotation looks a little bit different. Anaheim's a little bit better. I think Seattle's really good. And obviously Houston, I think they're the best team in baseball still. Time will tell.
All right, you've got your work cut out for you with the Boone podcast. In closing, tell us where we can find it. One thing I will say, unsolicited here, one thing I love about the Boone podcast, it's not just baseball. I mean, there's plenty of baseball, but you'll get movie stars, you'll get football coaches, football players. Mentioned that you had our guy Bernie on. It's an outstanding podcast. Where can folks find it? What's coming up on the pod?
Well, we just went into a partnership with Odyssey Sports, so it's going to be on the Odyssey Ledger, but it's wherever you can get your podcast. It's the Brett Boone podcast. A lot of fun. I've been doing it for over 2 years now. A lot of interesting guests. I'm looking for the chicken. Chico, would you like to listen to an episode of the San Diego Chicken? I love stuff like that. I'm in the process right now. The word's out on the street. So, nice. Yeah, you can get it wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to have a big year coming up, a lot of great guests. And like you said, it's easy for me to do the baseball players because we're speaking the same language, but I really kind of like to get outside of the box, go into the acting world, go into the MMA world, football, basketball, where I'm not completely comfortable. It's cool. It's educational for me. And yeah, love it. Going strong.
Very, very good, very entertaining, and of course, good people, very good people over there at Odyssey. So, Booney, we will touch base with you again next Wednesday, and we will get this thing started with predictions. But love talking to you, loving to see that you're doing well, and the facial hair's coming in nice, and I'm sure the golf game is equally as nice. But it's always fun, my man, and thank you so much for dropping by.
You got it, Chico. Take care.
That is Brett Boone, again, the former All-Star second baseman, host of the Brett Boone podcast. We will step aside. When we come back, we got some calls waiting. Somebody wants to talk some Cavs, and we'll do that. Anything on your mind, the final half hour, 216-626-7901. It is the Chico Borman Show here on the Big Play Network. from Brett Boone. I love talking baseball with Boone. He really is just a good dude. We've had plenty of conversations off the air, have nothing to do with baseball. But good stuff. Check out his podcast. I strongly recommend it. The Boone Podcast. Mentioned Bernie was on it. You can go back into the archives and check that out. But really entertaining, and we're fortunate. We'll have Brett on throughout the season, every Wednesday, including next Wednesday, which will be the day before the Major League Baseball season gets underway. The Cleveland Guardians in Seattle to take on the Mariners. I think I called them the Indians myself. Oh, boy.
Notice he did that a couple of times. It's all right. It's gonna take some time to get back into that Guardian groove, but I do like that he picked the Guards to win the division. That gets me going a little bit, Chico.
Yeah, and I think they have obviously, Chicago's going to be better. Chicago's going to be healthier, one would think. They do have a new skipper, and it's no longer Tony La Russa taking naps occasionally in the dugout. But, yeah, I think when you look at what the Guardians did last year, 17 guys making their Major League debut, and he still win 92 games, and those guys come back. You added a Josh Bell. Okay, it wasn't an earth-shattering move across baseball, but it was a damn good one for Cleveland, and he fits that culture. And that culture, while the Browns are still trying to find that culture, the Guardians have had that culture, and it is a thing. It is not just, well, what the hell is it? It's a thing.
Dude, the breaking news is just rolling today.
Oh, my goodness.
And this one is a little bit weird. So this is from Jeremy Fowler at ESPN. Breaking news, Mecole Hardman has agreed to terms with the Jets on a 1-year deal. More speed for Cleveland's offense is the tweet. So shout out to Mecole Hardman, who will become the first player in NFL history to sign a contract with 2 teams at one time. Is this a situation where Jeremy Fowler had a tweet in his drafts that he was going to sign with the Browns and then switched it to Jets and didn't fix the back end of this tweet? I think that's what's happening here.
Jeremy Fowler, very good at his job. I actually had a chance to meet him not long ago. Very, very good guy, very good at his job. Wow. So we really don't know he's really fast. I don't know if he'd be able to make it to New York, play in New York and Cleveland, run routes for both. That would be a pretty big trip, pretty long trip. Although he is fast, so we'll keep you updated on that. All right,
everything on Twitter is now saying that it's actually the Jets. The Jets? So we'll see which team he ends up playing for. But that's a weird tweet. I've never seen that happen before.
They were rumored with Mecole Hardman, but we'll have to keep our eye on that. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Love talking to you people. 216-626-7901. And we're going to say hello to BP in Pepper Pike next up on the Chico Borman Show. What's up, BP?
Hey, Chico. Long time no talk. How have you been?
I've been well, man. How about you?
Doing good, man. Thanks. I'm glad to hear you're back on the airwaves. And
thank you.
That was a great interview with Brett Boone. Very good.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah. In fact, I lived in the Philadelphia area back in 1980 when the Phillies won the World Series. So I was definitely a Bob Boone fan back then.
That party didn't end for a long time. That was their first one, man, and they went crazy, I'm sure, in the city of brotherly love.
Oh yeah, no, I lived about 45 miles outside of Philly, and I went to one of those games. I think I went to Game 6. It's so long ago I was a kid.
That was the winner. That was the clincher. Yeah, Game 6. It didn't go Game 6. Game 6 was the clincher. Wow, that's a good one.
Yeah, and I remember these huge horses on, policemen on horses were like, the game was still going on, and they were all around the field, keeping all the crazy Philly fans off the field. I'll never forget that.
I remember seeing horses for one of the World Series. I think it was like 98 or whenever it was. One of the ones the Yankees won, and Wade Boggs somehow got the officer off of one of the horses, and Wade Boggs just started riding the horse around Yankee Stadium. I didn't think that was possible, but hey, Wade Boggs was able to get it done. So BP,
sure.
What's
up?
When
you hit like Wade Boggs, you can do whatever you want.
Absolutely right. What's on your mind, pal?
No, well, they haven't talked in a while. The Cavs have had last year I called it the miracle season when, they were supposed to be the 27th worst team in the NBA and they, finished like 44-38. They finished in that play-in tournament. This year was when they got Donovan Mitchell, I predicted on the air that they would, win about 50 games, 51 games. That's going to happen. So that's been great. And, even last night, I like the way the bench is starting to come together. I've always been a Jetty Osman fan. I mean, I think he's like a roller coaster. I mean, I want to know, the guy is erratic as hell, like everybody can see.
Yeah.
But when the guy's on, you got Karis LeVert, Jetty Osman, Ricky Rubio has been pretty solid. They got Lamar Stevens. They could obviously use a big man. They let Kevin Love go. I'm interested to see what you think of Kevin Love so far with the Miami Heat. So, I think, in looking back, I think the Cavs made a mistake on Kevin Love because, they probably should have just kept him. And it looks like he's at least healthy enough to, play and score 10 points a game. So I kind of what do you think about some of these Cavs thoughts? And I'll give you my thoughts on the playoffs.
Okay. First off, let me just say, Karis LeVert, I was talking to Nick about this earlier in the show. I think Karis LeVert has been absolutely unbelievable, and not just on the offensive end. We focus sometimes too much on that end. He has been really bringing it, and that is great to see, and they're going to need him to do that. I'm going to disagree a bit on Kevin Love, and not that I don't, think that he would be fine here or that I was against keeping him here or anything like that. But I think what it came down to, everything I heard, everything I read, was that, he obviously had the injury. The wrist wasn't really responding like he wanted it to. But more importantly, he lost faith in his jumper, and the Cavs lost faith in his jumper. And when that happened, it was like, okay, this isn't going to work out. So it's like, Kevin, we want to have you on the team, but your minutes is going to be significantly reduced. Now, of course, they thought maybe Dean Wade could, fill the void, and Dean Wade has done anything but. But I think in terms of Kevin Love, I think that was more about, hey, Kevin saying to those guys, I appreciate all you've done, but if I'm not going to play that much, get me out of here. So I think it was just a mutual decision. I really do.
Yeah. And I actually give credit to Kevin Love because he kind of believed in himself and said, hey, guys, you're giving me these DNPs every night. I'm better than that. I can help this team. I can get you 10 to 12 points a night, but it looks like I have a feeling he had a dispute with Kobe Altman because I think he gets along pretty good with JB Bickerstaff. So it might have been more of a dispute with the front office. Maybe they wanted to give Dean Wade playing time because remember they did sign Dean Wade to a guaranteed contract.
They thought Dean Wade was going to fill that void, and Dean Wade it's been wow. Yeah. It's been unbelievable.
And he seems like Dean Wade. I mean, I pull for the guy. I don't think he can handle pressure too well. I think it's almost like a mental thing.
I think you're right.
He's not even getting up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now it is.
And now it's a playing time thing. The guy's not even getting on the court when they're shorthanded.
Yeah, JB's lost faith in him completely.
And Kevin Love, but when you see, every now and then I'll look at the box score. Kevin Love's had 12 points, 8 rebounds, and limited minutes. I think they're limiting his minutes pretty good too, to only about 20 minutes a game. So actually, his numbers could be bigger. I mean, good for him. Luckily it's not going to hurt the Cavs probably, and I don't think the Cavs would have kept him beyond this year anyway. So it was almost inevitable he was going to go.
All right, playoffs. You said you want to talk about?
Yeah, just real quick. It looks like the Cavs are solidified as the 4th seed in the East. Looks like the Knicks are, pretty dug in at the 5th seed. So, in my opinion, that's going to be a hell of a series. And I think if the Cavs have home court advantage, they'll win. But I think it's going to be a pretty knock down, drag them out series because, the Knicks have Julius Randle. He's a tough guy. Brunson plays tough. And now they brought in this Josh Hart from Portland, and he's a pretty aggressive defender. In fact, I think he'll be playing Donovan Mitchell in crunch time in the fourth quarters. So what do you think of that potential series with the Cavs and the Knicks?
Yeah, I like the Cavs. I said this earlier, and I think I'll continue to say it, and I think I don't think it's any kind of revelation. A couple things. One, we don't know how they're going to respond, these young guys, to playoff pressure. I mean, you hear from any NBA player, it is a totally different totally different mindset when you get to the postseason, for instance, going on the road for game one. And I mean, it is, it's an adventure, and it's something that you've got to get used to. And that's why I really put a lot of emphasis on last year, not because I thought they would go very far, even if they were ousted in the first round. I just wanted to see them get a taste of a playoff series and having to go on the road and such. So, I think only time will tell to see how they respond to that. This team has a ton of talent. You mentioned Donovan Mitchell, and I think with Donovan Mitchell, the only thing left for him is he's got to be, you mentioned like the crunch time, the last few, he's got to make those shots. Like, he can score 35, 40, and we love him, and he's a great, great player. But now you're talking about the crunch time is not only crunch time, it's the playoffs. He's got to be that guy for them in the closing moments that wants the ball, executes, and is able to knock down the big shot. I think he can. I hope he will.
Yep. No, great analysis. And like I said, I think it'll be must-see TV. It's not going to be easy going into New York. They haven't even been in the playoffs in years. I can't remember the last time the Knicks were in the playoffs. So those fans
can't
are
either.
Going to be, Yeah. I mean, you almost have to go back to Carmelo Anthony era, I think.
Yeah. It's been.
I don't know. I don't know when the hell they made, and that's like around 2014.
Yep, it's been a while. BP, it's good hearing from you, buddy. I appreciate you checking in, and have a good night.
You too. Good luck with the new show, man. I let a lot of people know about it as well.
Thank you, bud. I appreciate that. Nick, and any response to what BP had to say? I know you're a big hoops guy.
Yeah, I agree with him, and I think it's all stuff that we've said. I think he was a little hard on the Kevin Love situation and a spat with JB. I think we were kind of just making stuff up there a little bit, but I mean, obviously he fell out of the rotation. What happened with him and Kobe Altman, we don't know, but I think that he wanted an opportunity to play. He thought he had a little bit of gas left in the tank, and he's a free agent, so he wants another payday after this, as he should, So,
well, and when the Cavs, this is really important. When the Cavs made that decision, he wasn't performing. We need to stop acting like, he was lighting it up and he wasn't feeling, the wrist wasn't feeling better. His shot definitely wasn't going down. And so that's why the minutes dropped. I mean, it wasn't just, out of the blue, let's cut his minutes. They wanted him on the floor. But if his shot's not going down, I mean, we all know he's a liability defensively. It's not any great secret. So if he's not able to make that up and then some with his offense and his ability to rebound and all that stuff, well, then you're in trouble. And so I think, I heard a lot of people say, the Cavs did Kevin Love wrong. No, it wasn't that. I mean, it was what's best. They thought what was best at the time for both sides. And like I said, Kevin Love, the Cavs would have been totally cool with, hey, Kev, we're going to keep you on the roster. We want to keep you on the team. And hey, if you do get hot, play for more minutes, we'll get you in there. But if not, you're going to be limited. Kevin Love, being the competitor he is, and I don't fault Kevin for this. Like Nick just said, he wanted to play. He felt like he had something left, but, the Cavs had seen enough as far as him slow to return from the injury. I think it was a win-win for both sides, and I think it was just one of those things where, hey, there's no animosity per se. I think it had to happen.
Yeah, and if anything, the Cavs give Kevin Love a break. I mean, we'll let you out of here. What you put on tape for us the first half of this season wasn't pretty. It wasn't great. Go play somewhere and go see if you could, put some highlights on tape, put some numbers up, and go get another contract next year. And he has. I mean, he's scoring 8 and 6 a night for the Heat. That's not great, but he was never going to crack a playoff rotation in Cleveland. I'm definitely not losing sleep over the Kevin Love thing. It was weird when it happened because it was kind of out of nowhere. But
right.
Yeah, definitely nothing to lose sleep over there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't look, if the injury doesn't happen and his production doesn't slow, we're not having this conversation.
He was a 6th man of the year candidate last year.
Right. He all of a sudden became a guy that he was a liability. Not just because he couldn't shoot the ball or didn't have the same shot that he had before the injury, but he obviously wasn't going to be a defensive player. They knew that. So, okay, you're not helping us really at all if you're not knocking down shots. All right, 216-626-7901. Nick, I feel like we've got breaking news. We got to get everybody up to speed here. So Anthony Walker is going to be back.
Anthony Walker's back with the Browns.
Okay.
Dearness Johnson, Browns running back free agent. Who could forget that night in Denver?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the night in Cleveland against Denver.
He
Whole
runs
roster is out
angry.
with COVID,
Yep.
and he was able to put the team on his back, on his shoulders. Great story. Signing a 1-year deal with the Jacksonville Jags. And then we had like weird breaking news that wasn't. Mecole Hardman going to the Jets. That is official. It's the Jets on a 1-year, $6.5 million deal. It's not the Browns. Multiple reporters. I put Fowler out there because he was the first.
Mm-hmm.
There was several others that followed suit and reported Browns and then quickly changed to Jets. So I don't know what happened there. There were multiple national NFL reporters saying Mecole Hardman to the Browns was done on a 1-year deal, but then it ultimately ended up being the Jets. So we'll see what happens there. Hardman joining the fanfare that is the New York Jets, and we'll have to see if they get Aaron Rodgers. Does that free up Elijah Moore via trade? We know the wide receiver talk will continue, but Jerry Jeudy watch also ongoing.
Yeah, got a great back in Breece Hall there too as well. Now, do we think Mecole Hardman was on Aaron Rodgers' demand wish list, or that should have never been out? I don't know. I don't know. He is a speedster. I mean, he can definitely take the top off of defense. But I thought with Kansas City, he was a guy. Okay, not only did you have other guys that when Tyreek Hill was there, but you had other guys that were maybe better option, but I think more trusted options. Like he could absolutely just light you up, but consistently, was he going to catch the football?
A little one-dimensional, He's a speedster. He's a burner. He's what we thought Anthony Schwartz would be, run really fast. And he was good. He was productive. Good move for the Jets on just a 1-year deal. I wonder what the hell happened. Maybe the Browns had a framework in place and he changed his mind in the final hour, or are the Browns seriously that in on this Jeudy thing that they just let Hardman go and sign with New York? I don't know. It's weird that so many national reporters accidentally tweeted Browns, deleted it, and then doubled back to the Jets. It's weird to me how this has all played out in the last 15 minutes live on the show.
You got the wheels turning for me as well, because it's one thing when you said other reporters too. Now it really makes you think like something.
Like Jordan Schultz, who is with the Score, friend of Big Play. We've had him on the network and stuff on Big Play Reflog. Like he put it out there. There were other reporters sending out Browns, and then now it is Jets. Like that is the decision is Jets on a 1-year $6.5 million. But at first everybody was saying Browns.
All right. Well, if you'd like to respond to any of the free agent news, I think Anthony Walker. I love that. I'm glad he decided to come back, and sometimes, that could have been a situation where, the way things ended, and well, maybe the culture isn't there, and he doesn't want to be a part of it, but he does come back. There's a new scheme. Would he have come back if it was Joe Woods? And I don't know. I mean, I don't want to crush Joe Woods at all, but I do think Jim Schwartz probably gives a lot of the guys on the defensive side of the ball a lot more trust and a lot more belief that they can turn this thing around. But Anthony Walker on a team that desperately needs leadership. I don't know whether it's on the offensive side of the ball, but certainly on the defensive side of the ball. I'm glad that he's back. All right. So we've got that going on. And as we said, the Cavaliers, good stuff from BP there. I'm getting pumped for the playoffs. I really am. I'm excited to see. Not only, the fans are going to – I'm just thinking of the playoff game at that. It's going to be nuts.
It's going to be different, too. Like, I know we kind of talked about it and grazed over it, the fact that this is the first time in decades that the Cavs will be in the playoffs without LeBron James. And dare I add, the Knicks, if it is New York and if that's kind of how things settle, seems like the Cavs just about cemented in that 4 seed. What happens at 5 and 6 to be seen.
They're what, 3.5 games up on the Knicks?
And if it is the Knicks, right, yeah. And if it is, like, think of those storylines. The Knicks wanted Donovan Mitchell The Cavs have him. Donovan Mitchell, the superstar that he is in Cleveland
Yep.
and not in Madison Square Garden. The Knicks also just, the America basketball child, and Stephen A. is going to be in Cleveland, and everybody's going to be here. It's going to be a crazy, crazy month of April as we wrap up March here, Chico.
Yeah. So that's going to be fun. Cavs with 8 games left on the slate. And speaking of tomorrow, we're going to be talking some Cavs basketball. Chris Manning from the Locked On Cavs podcast will join me in the second hour of the show, so looking forward to that. And then, man, you think about, we got March Madness is back, Sweet 16. You got 4 games on tap Thursday, 4 games on tap Friday as we get ready for the Final Four. And, of course, tomorrow you've got Michigan State, Kansas State. Kansas State, a 2-point underdog in that game.
Now that makes you think.
That does make you think.
Because I was hoping that Michigan State was going to be the underdog, and I was going to bet that. Chico, I'm in a break from betting. That first weekend cleared me out a little bit more than I would have liked on my typical balance. I don't like when my typical balance gets like below $100. When I started in January, I put in the 5 and I got the free 200 or whatever the promotion was back then. I turned my free 200 into about 130, and now I'm sitting at around 70. I don't like when it goes below 100, so took the week off, but I'll be back for Sweet 16. I see all these trolls and people on Twitter tweeting at me where my bet slips and my out of money. I'm not out of money. I'm holding off for the Sweet 16.
You're being very, very frugal. You're being very smart.
Yeah, right?
You're very cheap.
Responsible, we're all about the responsible gaming at the Big Play Network, and, obviously with our partners over at Tipico. So, yeah, we're not trying to go crazy here.
Look at you with that, like the plugs in there.
throwing in some $5 parlays, trying to get rich. Nothing wrong with that.
I know Michigan State. I know it's Tom Izzo, and I know that this is what they do in March, but I am a little bit surprised that to me that should be reversed. I put Kansas State as a 2-point favorite.
Same.
But okay, Arkansas and UConn, the Huskies. A 4-point underdog or a 4-point favorite in that game.
Now, Dave took UConn in that game on our show on Monday and confidently took UConn with the 4.5. I don't know. I like Arkansas. It's going to be good. That's going to be a close one.
The way UConn's playing, I'm thinking about what Oglesby told us the other day, that they for a tournament, we're down to 16 teams, obviously. And for him to say that he thinks Connecticut is the most physical team left by far. And there's some you look at teams like UCLA, you look at teams like Tennessee, all of these guys. There's a lot of teams that are physical. But
even the Zags with Timmy.
Yeah. Now defensive. Yeah, I worry about them defensively, but Arkansas is, Eric Musselman doesn't take off his shirt for anybody. You know what I mean? And if you're going to have that mentality, you're going to play. They're going to bring it. They're absolutely going to bring it.
I was on the wrong side of that Kansas game. That's actually what started off my break. Was Kansas, Arkansas.
I just
popped that shirt off.
Do they have an answer for Sinago? I don't know.
I don't know.
That's a tough matchup. FAU and Tennessee, no surprise. Tennessee a 5.5-point favorite.
Yeah.
That was, I think, save for the surprises, the shockers. Purdue getting beaten. The biggest shocker for me was watching Tennessee not just beat Duke, but absolutely bludgeon them. Yeah. And I thought Duke was, they were hot at the right time, and they were getting guys back healthy, and they just seemed to really be hitting their stride. And Tennessee's like, you're playing the JV, we're on varsity, and you're gonna feel it. Tennessee absolutely pushed them around, and so I can't envision Tennessee's going to have any issues with FAU.
Nope, I like Tennessee there.
And then the late game tomorrow night, Gonzaga and UCLA. We know Gonzaga can score. UCLA, we also know, is one of maybe the best defensive team in the country, or at least when you talk about left in the tournament. Mick Cronin, you go back to his teams at Cincinnati, that's the staple. Again, you talk about physical, you talk about aggressive, you talk about defense. Mick Cronin brings that to the table. And his teams always bring that to the table. So, man, we've got a lot going on. It's going to be fun. Still free agent news coming in. Again, if you're just tuning in, Anthony Walker back with the Browns. There was some, almost April Fool's type trickery with Mecole Hardman, but apparently Mecole Hardman is a member of the Jets, not the Browns. D'Ernest Johnson, former Browns back. We always root for him. He's going to be down in Jacksonville. And, of course, the trade rumors still floating around. What's going to happen? Are the Browns that serious about Jerry Jeudy? Obviously, keep it right here, and we'll keep you updated on all of that. But, man, really good stuff today. We had some good hoops talk. BP checking in there. It was great to talk to Brett Boone. Matter of fact, go to the our Twitter show account, at Chico Show CLE on YouTube. The Chico Borman Show. Facebook will have it as well. Instagram, we've got an account. Somebody asked me today, do you have an Instagram account? I'm like, me personally, no, but the show does, and that's what's most important. But anyway, all of those outlets are going to have clips from the show as we do every day. Nick does a great job with that, but certainly you want to check out what Brett Boone had to say as well. We thank Booney. We thank you, Nick. Awesome job as always. Is Dave, is he done from his nap? He's going to be back here tomorrow.
So Dave actually is chiming in on the Twitter inbox. We didn't even really hit the Twitter inbox today because it was a packed show.
It was, yeah.
Dave did. He was the sole one, which I was a little surprised. Dave, the sole person to say, Hoodie Chico today. I got my way. I made my impact on you. I told you. You don't have to be collar Chico. You don't have to come in here buttoned up on the Big Play Network. It's a little more relaxed, man. I like the hoodie.
Try to be a little, I try to class this joint up a little bit. All right, McAllister? All right? No. It's today was a very casual day, I thought. And
yeah.
A lot of that had to do, I'll spill the beans a little bit. Again, how we make the sausage, peel back the curtain. Nick took a lot of it, because some of you are going, wait a minute. I had it at the over-under at 4.5, and I took the over by far for Chico screwing something up on the technical side. Nothing happened because Nick kind of took control, took the reins, allowing me to kind of do my thing, whatever that is. So, Nick, thank you.
Yeah.
Very, very much.
Absolutely. I produced a show out of my parents' attic for many episodes on the old stream deck. So you got it, Chico. Don't sweat it.
You're a grinder.
I'll be back in here with you tomorrow.
You're a grinder. God love them, and God bless all of you. We'll be back with more again tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And coming up to end the week, you got the Boobie Gibson show is coming up. We got what else do we have coming up on? I'm trying to think. Well, Monday you got the Reflog show, Bernie and Hanford. So all sorts of good stuff, right?
Bernie
here.
and Hanford haven't announced it yet. Another big guest that Browns fans are going to want to hear from on Monday.
Lamar Jackson. Now he goes straight to the.
Can you imagine? We just we pivot. It's a Ravens show now.
Instead of Ozzie Newsome, they go straight to the guy and they say, "All right, let's talk Lamar Jackson with Lamar." They could.
It's another Browns legend. We'll give that hint. It's another Browns legend on the Bernie Kosar show this Monday.
Good tease. We'll talk to you again tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Until then, enjoy your Wednesday evening, everybody. See you.